Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing with our summer scout. And as we take a look at the South Carolina Gamecocks, this is a team that my brother and I are all aboard on. Like, after following the social media of the South Carolina Gamecocks football program, it's really not hard to fall in love with this program. I think Beamer's done a phenomenal job. And just to talk about the rebuild so far, you're seeing the steps being taken place, right? He's got that culture down at South Carolina. Now you're starting to see the talent come into the recruiting trail as well. Beamer did a nice job in the transfer portal. Excited to get into this program. Now, before we do again, just want to say thank you to you guys for checking us out, and especially the South Carolina fans. We covered the spring game. We've been covering South Carolina on the recruiting trail. You guys have shown a ton of love and support. We appreciate you guys rocking with us. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Then more importantly, let us know in the comment section what you guys think of our preview. You guys can help us fill in the gaps a little bit of our understanding of this team. We appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. South Carolina Gamecocks heading into 2023 here.
I mean, it starts with Spencer Rattler. When you saw the development from his game from the start of that season till that Tennessee game, I mean, that Tennessee game, I just went back and watched it. A, the atmosphere was absolutely bonkers. So fun. And B, Spencer Rattler, he took over that team. I mean, he willed them to that victory. He was extremely good in the passing game, was making plays with his feet. He just took his game to a level I don't think we got to see for that whole season. And
that was first-round quarterback caliber play out of Spencer. Right? He has a top 3 arm in the country. I don't think anyone would argue that. Now, what I want to highlight on the offensive side of the ball, having to do with Spencer Rattler, is the change at OC. I'm not convinced, and South Carolina fans, if you guys have heard any rumors about this, please let me know. I'm not convinced until I texted you this that Satterfield wasn't calling the plays or was called. I'm not convinced he was calling the plays against Tennessee and Clemson because that was a different offense. I feel like for so much of that South Carolina season, you watched that Florida game, dreadful. They didn't want to attack vertically down the field. You have Spencer Rattler, who has a cannon of an arm, can make any throw in the book that you want him to make, and you're not using him. And then you turn on the Clemson and Tennessee film, and he's slinging the ball around, pushing it downfield vertically. I don't know if there was a switch at OC the play calling in the last 2 weeks, but it was night and day. I think South Carolina fans have a lot to like about Dowell Loggins coming in because, quite frankly, that South Carolina offense for a majority of the season just left a little bit to be desired. But Spencer Rattler coming back, paired with arguably the best wide receiver in the SEC and Juice Wells, you got to be fired up if you're South Carolina heading into 2023.
And that's for me. I think they reloaded the weapons. I love Trey Knox. I think he's really
a great fit.
I mean, Jaheim Bell was good in his own right, but he just in that offense, it was weird. He just didn't. Whatever it was, it didn't work. Obviously, he didn't have the production he should have probably at that tight end spot. Clearly, why he's gone. But you're bringing in a Trey Knox who is at least his equal, if not. Well, I mean, those two are close. There's big athletic tight ends. And
I think Jaheim Bell was just kind of a gadget guy, and Trey Knox are getting a little bit more of a legit, and that might be disrespectful to Jaheim Bell, and I was really high on him heading into 2022. But Trey Knox is more of a legitimate tight end, and because of the injuries, we're using Jaheim Bell as a running back at points, and it was kind of a mess, if you will, on the offense side of the ball. But Trey Knox, you got Eddie Lewis, who I'm kind of a fan of too, and then Dill. You got to talk about Nick Harbor coming in too, because he's going to get some burn early.
And that's what you got to think. I think obviously losing Josh Vann, you got to replace him. He was really, really good. He really balled out. I mean, he obviously was the number 2 to Juice Wells. Juice Wells is still their alpha dog, but you got to replace him. And you're right. It's you're starting to bring in some legit recruits who can really, really play. And Nichols Harbor, it feels like that's part of the reason he's here is he can play right away and he can make an impact immediately.
Yeah, and looking at this offense, I love Spencer Rattler. I'm a rider for some. One thing about Spencer Rattler too, and I don't like to talk too much about the actual person. It's not like I know Spencer Rattler. Seems like he's grown up, beloved by the South Carolina fans.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You watch that game against Tennessee. I mean, the energy, the leaders, everyone was rallying around him, and he put that team on his back. The offensive line was not playing incredibly good in that game, and he was just making plays, finding a way to gut it out. And I think you're right. It's sometimes at Oklahoma, it did feel like fans were all over him, and they really were getting on him about.
And he didn't respond exactly as well as you wanted him to either. He faced a lot of it. The game against Florida And then for Spencer Rattler in this offense to bounce back against Tennessee and Clemson, like I think that speaks a lot about where Spencer Rattler is as a leader. Now,
also where Beamer's got this team, I mean, they're
100% cultures through the roof.
With Muschamp, it always kind of felt like a losing program. It never felt like it ever got even remotely going. You didn't really have any big wins. Man, there's something going. I think that what you saw with Rattler and the step he took, and if Beamer can kind of just put that into guys and make them play the way Spencer Rattler played, because I want Spencer Rattler as my quarterback any day if he's playing the way he did against Clemson.
100%. You look at that Tennessee Clemson film, it's like that's elite quarterback play. Now, there's a lot to be excited about on this offense. And this is where I'm going to ask the South Carolina fans to maybe like fill in the blanks for the boys here. Like the running back spot and the offensive line, there are some question marks. And I want to start with the offensive line. That offensive line, I'm really surprised they got 3 guys there who are in NFL camps right now, because that was a bad offensive line pretty much all year. And I think a lot of Spencer Rattler's problems was he just didn't really have clean pockets to throw from. And he didn't really trust the pockets either. There wasn't a lot to trust. Like that offensive line had some serious problems. They had some serious problems all year. And maybe that's why you didn't see the ball get pushed down vertically, because they just couldn't protect. You lose some of those guys. Like South Carolina, like what we watched the spring game. It wasn't, and then you lose your starting left tackle in the spring game. Like that's the only question mark I have with this team is like this offensive line. Can you give Spencer Rattler some time to throw? Because if you do, and you can protect Spencer Rattler, I mean, this is one of the better offenses in the SEC.
But you are right. It's like I don't know how you can be, if you're being realistic, and like I'm not a realistic fan, so when like Michigan,
especially when it comes to South Carolina,
I'm gonna convince myself they're awesome, and that's my team. That's who I go with. Their national title every year. But you do look at this offensive line, and I think Beamer's even kind of said it. He has questions. I know they brought in some transfers. Nee Monsel's not on this list, obviously, but he's a guy who you bring in and obviously very athletic, and there's some upside, but he hasn't shown it at the level of the Power 5, and frankly, you're just wondering. And not to say it couldn't be good. They did bring some transfers in. I think what you ultimately like is they are addressing it in the recruiting. It's like
yes,
really crank it up at that position, getting the guys from South Carolina in state, taking them from Georgia and
100%
Clemson. So again, Beamer sees it. He's gonna make the steps to correct it, but this year I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it's going to look like.
It's not. And then at the running back spot, you have some questions too, right? And I think it speaks a little, like I like Juju McDowell as kind of a scat back. He's probably not a guy, and South Carolina didn't really see him as a guy that could be on the field a lot because they had Jaheim Bell playing running back a lot. And that's a all SEC tight end that you're putting in out of position because you don't have a lot of confidence in your running game when Marshawn Lloyd went down. Okay, you got Juju McDowell. You go into the Division II level and grab Mario Anderson, who the body type, like I love. Like this dude is a fire hydrant. I like that. It's just you have questions. You're going Division II to the SEC. Now, I will say, DeCorian Joyner playing running back and getting it sounds like he's playing pretty much exclusively running back at practice. You saw him in the spring game. Like he's dynamic. And he's I like the fit, right? He was a quarterback, then he moves to wide receiver. Like he's got a solid build to be a running back. I think you watch the spring game, he's got to work on getting downhill a little bit. But, man, like he's probably the guy. If you were to ask me right now who's going to be the leading rusher on this team, I'm probably pointing to DeCorian Joyner.
I'm looking for from this rushing attack is be creative like it was last year towards the end where they're running reverses and end arounds. Like I like getting the ball in Marion Brown's hands. I think he is really good in space if they can get him on the end around type play because I thought he played really good doing that against Tennessee. And that's kind of what I think the offensive line's not really built to just jam it down like at Georgia's throat, Alabama, or like the big dogs, the SEC. But you get these athletes in space. I think that's where they do have some guys who can hurt teams. DeCorian Joyner is he's a natural ball carrier. He maybe isn't quite the running back yet, and he's never played it. So it's like.
But you're optimistic that having the spring and having fall camp to get this dude knows how to carry the rock. Like you see that with the football in his hand. Now you got to say all right, can you get through between the tackles, run downhill? Can you pick up and pass pro? But I mean, he kind of checks off all the boxes. I think he's going to be
offense. Run like a creative offense, like it did against Clemson and Tennessee. That's when it was really humming. I don't know. I think you kind of maybe do need to play a little unorthodox and get the ball in your guys' hands in space and not try to just run in between the tackles because I don't think any part of this team is built to do that. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, starting to on the defensive side of the ball, there are also some question marks here. I love the secondary. I think it's one of the better groups in the SEC. And you had some like true freshmen like really step up, like Nick Ian and DQ Smith. Like really played some meaningful football. It's like not even like highly touted kids coming out of high school. They weren't on my radar in terms of the recruiting world. They balled out. Now up front, like this has been a problem, Dylan. I remember doing this team last year. Like, gotta stop the run. You gotta be good in the trenches. And I think Zach Pickens took some steps, and I thought he was really good last year. Jordan Birch still left a little bit to be desired. He's off at Oregon. This is the big question mark I have on South Carolina's defense is that defensive line in terms of stopping the run and getting after the passer. I think Tonka Hemingway is probably your best guy to do so. And Jordan Strahan, I think that's how you pronounce it, Jordan Strahan. I've heard it a bunch of ways. He was awesome in 2021. Missed most of the season in 2022. I love getting him back because I think he gives you some serious juice off the edge. But I think it starts like you got to stop the run. You got to get into third and longs, and then you can ping guys back and get after the passer. But the amount of times they lost on first down in the run game was just kind of unacceptable.
And again, just for like South Carolina, there is some deficiencies in both fronts. Obviously, you talked about the offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, Huntley and Hemingway have played decent football at times. They did play a fair amount at least last year, so you got some experience. But, I mean, not pros. That's certainly not the sense I get from watching them on the field. This is going to probably be can Shane Beamer build these units up over time and with the portal and with the recruiting, which again we mentioned.
Recruiting. He's addressing it, which is nice, but it still seems to be kind of a lagging problem.
Like next year or two, it does feel like. I mean, you're going to have to piece it together. And you look, the secondary does look like it's going to have some guys. Some of these young dudes did play. You're replacing a lot at linebacker, but it will start up front with this D line. If they can just be solid, they got to be better.
Yeah, and I'll shout out Jataeus Gear. I like his game a lot coming in the transfer portal. Linebackers, that was another position that you suffered some really tough injuries, but I like Coblin, I like Debo Williams. Then you get to the back end. Like this is an elite group. Like Marcel Style, DQ Smith, Nick Emery. Like I love this secondary, and it's crazy because you lose Darius Rush and Cam Smith, who are both guys that when we did our NFL draft stuff, we're high on both of them. I still think this is one of the better secondaries in the SEC.
Yeah, and that'll be the thing. That's where it started last year. They played really good, took the ball away a little bit. It's going to be a part of probably what they're going to need to do. They're going to need to steal some possessions and make some plays in this back end because this is the crew that has that kind of ability to make it happen. I just don't see anywhere else that they can really dominate a game.
All right. Now talking about stealing possessions, and Bill, you see me scrolling down to the special teams. We don't normally get into special teams when we get into our summer scouting. Elite special teams, and like at times, like one football games, because of the special teams, you have one of the best punters returning, Kai Kroger, Miss Jeter, pretty automatic at that kicker. I mean, it's got, and you look at their record, like South Carolina the last 2 years probably was not as good of a team as their record showed. And that is because special teams was dominant. And I love it. It's the third phase of football. Beamer's showing that it's a very important phase. Like, that they're going to steal some possessions in special teams. They do it better than anybody in the country. Now, they're the last piece of the puzzle. I wanted to shout out the special teams just because I feel like you got to.
Beamer ball.
Is taking a look at the schedule. And we're going to break this North Carolina-South Carolina game down later this week, which I'm extremely excited to get into. Looking at the schedule, and a question to the South Carolina fans, and you too, Dale. Like, what's your expectation? You're taking a look at this schedule and, like, projected record and, like, best-case scenario for the Gamecocks heading into 2023 here.
I mean, it's tough. And the thing with South Carolina, there's – games like North Carolina, Mississippi State, Missouri, Texas A&M, those are all going to, I feel like, be like tight lines.
50-50, yeah.
Pick'ems and in that type of game. And that's the one thing is they do win some of those games now. It felt like a lot of times in the past, they never got any upsets, and B, they didn't win many of the games they should have. But Beamer does have this team. They're going in the right direction. Again, I do think there's some of the, like, glaring holes, if you will, but there were some glaring holes last year and they figured it out and won a lot of games.
And what I'm saying here and looking at this schedule is that's going to be a massive game against North Carolina. And like Drake May, phenomenal player. I'm excited to get into that one. We'll kind of save it there. The only game, looking at this schedule, maybe I could add 3 games that are really tough. And I don't know if I'm picking South Carolina to win. On the road in Athens, like that's just going to be really tough. On the road at Tennessee, but again, the question, like, hey,
they're going to be in that game for sure. It's
100%. Like, and then you go on the road to Texas A&M, and we're not sure what that Texas A&M team is going to look like. But if you can get through kind of that meat of the schedule, like you're at home your last 4 games against Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Clemson. And again, outside of that game on the road in Athens, Georgia, like there's a lot of winnable games for South Carolina, and at least being competitive in some of those games against those top opponents from the SEC. We don't really know what Texas A&M is going to look like. I'm not even going to try to guess what they're going to look like because they got my brain in a pretzel right now. Like, you're pretty optimistic that you can win 8 ball games here. And if you sack another 8-win season, again, this is a rebuild that is being done the right way. Like, first, Beamer is implementing the culture. The culture seems to be strong now going into his 3rd year. Now the recruiting is starting to pick up. You put another 8-win season together for South Carolina. You're really excited about how they close up this 2024 class. And it does seem like South Carolina is taking those incremental steps to kind of be a contender in the SEC. And I'm not sure if it's going to be this year, although you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country to do so. This is going to be a really fun team to watch over the next couple of years. Again, appreciate you guys. Try to keep it under 15 minutes for you guys. Went a little overtime. Appreciate you guys checking the boys out as usual. Again, South Carolina fans, if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you rocking with us. But more importantly, let us know in the comments section some players that we might be sleeping on, especially with this offensive line. Like, just give us a little optimism that we're going to protect our boy Spencer Sanders. Or Spencer, I don't know. I keep calling him Spencer Sanders.
I think it too. I'm not going to
Spencer Rattler. Appreciate you guys checking the boys out, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.